This is our plan from this morning on how we're going to survive the next couple of weeks. All right, so mod 2. So this is really like, if this mod had a theme, I'd call it like intro to full stack. So what we're doing in this mod and what we're doing for the rest of the program roughly follows this shape. Spend mod 1 learning a little bit about how to make computers do the things that we want them to do. Now we're getting to the meat of it. So this is a client. For our purposes, in mod 2 at least, that's a big fancy word for browser. Your browser is going to ask for something from a server. For our purposes in mod 2, that's going to be a Rails API. And then that server is going to give it back to the client. That's it. The whole program is really just diving deep on this pattern right here. We're going to introduce a metric fuck ton of new things in mod 2. Mod 2, hands down the hardest mod. Like, just steel yourself up for that right now. It is the most new things. They're all pretty different things too. And so, like, if there's a mod that gets overwhelming, it's this one. Now, here's the like good news on this. So we're going to do all of these things. We're going to talk about the boxes. We're going to talk about the arrows. We're going to talk about lots and lots of stuff at a very thin surface level. Most of mod 2 is us getting a lot of this stuff under our fingers mechanically. If you'll remember from like when we talked about the Dreyfus model of skill acquisition, we went to novice, and advanced beginner, and then competent. Okay, so we start understanding stuff around competence. Novice, advanced beginner, we're just able to do stuff. Mod 2 is mostly about being able to do stuff. We start getting some of this understanding back in mod 3. Mod 3, we're going to start building some depth on a lot of the things that we cover in mod 2. Mod 3 is really mod 2 part 2. So if mid next week, what all of this isn't all the way clicking, that's completely fine. What you have to be able to do by the end of this mod is make a browser ask for something, get it back, and then make it show up on a page. If you can do that, we can work on really grokking it later. Questions about anything we've talked about so far? Okay, so this is the shape of it. You're going to make APIs. You're going to make websites. We're going to shift over to JavaScript. We're going to use JavaScript to add stuff to a page. We're going to use JavaScript to get stuff from our Rails API. Describing how the web and internet work is these arrows. And then we're going to have our websites add stuff to our APIs. That's what you're going to have to do by the end of this module. So,
is that basically like what the coding challenge is what you're saying?
Yep. Coding challenge, you say. If you remember back to when we did the mod 1 overview, and I did that thing that looked an awful goddamn lot like what the code challenge ended up being, shocker, I'm going to do that again also. So I'm going to show you how all of these pieces fit together and it's going to look a whole lot like the code challenge. Most of it, at least. So let's dive in. All right, I got an empty folder, nothing up this sleeve, nothing up this sleeve. So first standard is build simple APIs using Rails. This is where you're starting today. We're gonna do that with Rails new -- API backend. And there she is. I'm gonna head over here, and my goal is to make something that when I ask for some data, I get it back. So a couple things I need to do to make that happen. I need to tell it to listen for the request. So I'll go, hey, if you ever make a GET request to dogs, I want you to forward that request over to a dogs controller's index action. Cool, well, none of those things exist. So then I make a controller called dogs. A controller is just a file. It's a class. Hey, we've seen these before, classes and stuff. So we're going to define an action called index. Holy shit, actions kind of look like methods. Yep, guilty. And we're going to say, all right, give me every dog, and then render JSON. Why don't you just send that on back? Now the application is going to go, okay, cool, what's a dog? So we tell it what a dog is. And it goes, all right, look, I can just run this thing on the command line and it makes all these files for me. It's pretty dope. Hey, more classes. Handy. And in fact, we get all kinds of cool stuff. So like in mod 1, we had to do like that self.all, womp womp, add all. We get all that stuff for free. It's inheriting it all from application record. Excellent. Migrations, I think we saw a little bit of those also. This is just active record at this point. So I could say that these things have a name, and I don't know, they have an age. All right, cool. So I made a migration. I can run the migration, and then I can go over to my seeds. Hey, even made a seeds file for me. Do something like dog, create, name, Bixby, age 30 or so. In case like I haven't told you, Bixby is very long gone. Mesa probably is too. All right, so I make some seeds. I seed my database. And now watch this. I run Rails S over there on localhost 3000. I go to /dogs. Hey, I see some dogs. That's building simple APIs using Rails. That's this whole box right there. We're also going to be able to like add things to our database, and that ends up not being so very difficult either. If I go back over to that controller, I can also make one for create. And that can be like, hey, whatever name you give me, why don't you make a dog with that? I'll take an age too, if you don't mind. And then we're going to respond with the dog that we just made. and say that we created something. Nope. That's it. Oh, we need to route to it also. Cool, backend's done. That's all you need to be able to do with Rails to get through mod 2. Mod 3, we're going to talk about authentication. We're going to talk about sanitizing data. We're going to be talking about all kinds of other things in mod 2. We're going to get some more depth in this. But if you can do the things that I just did, you can create simple APIs using Rails. All right, let's talk about websites with HTML and CSS, this seemingly unrelated topic. So if I make a front-end folder and I touch an index.html and an app.css and an app.gerbilscript file. All right, so I have 3 empty files in this folder. For the HTML, probably did some of this stuff in pre-work, and it's not so very different. HTML has a head and it has a body. We need a title. We can bring in those files that we just made. And then over here, I can do something like, say, this is my dog pound. And the dogs in it go in an unordered list. All right, so I got a list of dogs. And right now I can run this and see it show up on the page. Cool. Sort of looks like shit though. So the thing I'm about to show you, the reason I'm showing you this is I want to show you how fucking easy it is, because I don't ever want to see you show a project for the rest of this program that uses a browser default typeface. They're hideous. Knock it off. Go to Google Fonts. Well, I'm going to set a timer on this one. All right, so I don't know. How about Roboto? No one ever got fired for picking Roboto. So I'll pick a regular and maybe a thin line. And I'm going to import it. And I'm going to go over to the CSS. I'm going to bring in that thing that I just imported. I'm going to say that the font family is Roboto with a fallback to sans serif. And in 34 seconds, I'm not using a browser default typeface anymore. So I don't want to hear any of this. I ran out of time shit. This is just not true. All right, cool. So I've got some CSS in there. It's not even like a ton of work to make these things not look terrible either. So if I serve this up, I could say something like, all right, the ULs, I don't want those bullet points. And I want the LIs in them to have some padding. And I also want those LIs to have a box shadow. Should be spaced out a little bit too. this should constrain the width. And maybe center the text in there. Text. Oops, should work. Oops, text align. There we go. Darken that a little bit. Awesome. So now we've got something that like looks marginally less terrible. That is building websites with HTML and CSS. Now, what if in that index.html, I want to read this out of a database. I don't want to hard code in every dog in the dog pound, man. I want to read that out of something dynamic. So what I could do is go over to that JavaScript file. Why don't I put those in an array? All right, so I've got some dogs now. I want to turn those dogs into HTML elements or something kind of like it. So I could do that by mapping over them. I could say for every one of these dogs, I want you to create an LI. And I want you to set the contents of that LI to something like dog.name, and then maybe dog.age. Give them ages too. How old is Ahmed? He's just a little boy. Bigger than Damon though. All right, so, and then we're going to return this LI. And then I need somewhere to put those dogs. I've made dog elements. I want to put them in here. So I'm going to give this a class of dogs. I'm going to grab that dogs element. And then I'm going to go through each of the dogs that I made. And then I'm going to add each one of them to the page. And if I do that, oops, this is create element, query selector dogs. There they are. Now I can get rid of my hard-coded ones. Cool. Using JavaScript, using some data, adding stuff to the page. That is demonstrating basic programming proficiency with JavaScript, and it's creating and manipulating DOM nodes. Now, the whole point of this is that I wanted to get this from the server. I want to retrieve data using fetch. So I can start up that backend server, a Rails server I had earlier. And, oh shoot. I can start that Rails server. And what I'm trying to do is get, did I delete it already? I want to get that dogs data that I had. I want to get this array from here, not from my JavaScript file. All right, can do. So I can say I want to fetch from localhost 3000/dogs. I want to take the response that I get I'm telling it that it's JSON. I turn the JSON into a JavaScript object. And then I want to do all the same things I just did. And say that dogs is response.dogs. And all the rest of this is the same. Now I don't need to hard code it anymore. All right, are they in there? Nope. Oh, I didn't do cores. That's right. There's a couple things that we'll do in this mod that are a little bit of like black magic. The thing I'm about to do is one of them. Go over here. I uncomment out that. Then I go over here and uncomment out this. I do that, and then restart that server. All right, what now? There they are. There's Bixby and Mesa. There's my pals. So what I just did was retrieve data using fetch. And I did it over the web and the internet. The last thing that you're going to be accountable for in this mod is submitting data with forms. So what that looks like is if I want to add a dog to the dog pound, then what I need to do is make a post request to localhost 3000/dogs. And then I fill out all the things that somebody is going to fill out to make a dog in my app. So this has a name, it's got an age. And then you need to be able to submit it. Call it add dog. All right, so if I look back on this, I get a really ugly looking form. Let's use some of our CSS chops, make that a little bit less ugly. Better already. Better already. Constrain the width of the form. And make these all. Gobble it all up. Cool. I can target that submit button also. All right, that looks a little bit better. So, all right, I got this form all set up. And then one last thing I need to do. This is another one of those like kind of hacky things that we'll do in this mod. I need to go back over to that controller that I made earlier. And I need to not do that. I need to redirect it back to the page that I'm on. Cool. Cool. So if I add Harmony, who's little? Oop, broke something. All right, something got in. Good, good, good. Let's see what I screwed up. So post request to dogs. Did I make the post request to dogs? Yes, I did. It is at 3000/dogs. It is a post. I'm taking post requests of dogs. I'm going to the create action of dogs, which is here. This makes a new dog and then redirects back to this page. Do that. And then this asks for the dogs again. All right. So let's see what I tried to make this with. Got name and age. Oops. So did that for both of them. That'll do it. All right. There we go. And there they are. And I can even erase the evidence that I ever screwed this up by going back over to backend and running my seeds again. That is, if I clear them out first. It's kind of a grim method name, given the subject, but don't worry about it. They're made up. Cool. So I refresh this page. I've got Bixby and Mesa. I have a little Harmony in there. And then Harmony shows up on the page. And I have submitted data using forms. And that is mod 2. It is a shit ton of different things, but we don't go very deep on any of them. We'll get deep in mod 3. So recognizing that you shouldn't be able to do any of the things that I just did, if you can do the things that I just did, you're probably in the wrong mod. What questions do you have for me?
Do we need to install anything to be able to do most of the stuff you were just doing just now?
You should have done it in your day one setup. I don't think there's anything new. You guys should have Rails already. If you followed all the first day setup instruction stuff, I think you have everything you need for this mod.
Okay. Because, yeah, mine was broken a little bit, so we'll see when we get there.
Yes.
The only thing I'd add to that is light server.
Oh, that's also in the first day setup instructions.
It is, but we come across people not having it quite a bit.
Gotcha. So yeah, that one, npm install -g light server. And then that's fixed. Cool. What else?
I noticed that when you did your Rails command, you did --API backend.
Yep.
And I thought it was you did the name first. Is there? I don't understand how, like, syntactically you were able to do the --API and then your backend.
It doesn't matter. You can do it either way.
Mm-hmm.
So like, the options just need to be in there somewhere. So I could have done some app --API, or it's not too fussy about where it is in there.
Okay.
Is there a way to check that you have Rails going the way it's supposed to, just to make sure?
Yeah, if you can do Rails new dash dash API and then some name, and it doesn't throw up, you're probably in good shape.
It did like a ton of stuff.
Yep, it's supposed to. It should look like.
Okay.
Do Rails new dash dash API some other backend.
Okay, cool. So that's normal.
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure with Ubuntu and stuff, it's been like, I've been a little nervous about that the whole time.
Gotcha. And then if you can Rails S in that same folder, or you need to go into the folder, that's right. You go into that folder you just made and then do Rails S. You should see something like this, or I'm already running one right now, so it's mad at me. You should be able to do that and then go to localhost 3000 and see that graphic. You can do that, everything's set up right. Other questions about any of the stuff I just did?
Kind of unrelated, but just thinking ahead, I noticed a lot of the Mod 3 and Fivers in their, or especially Fivers in their presentations used different backends. So Ruby on Rails is the backend that is technically taught through Flatiron's curriculum, but then we can request classes in the future on other avenues.
Yep. I would say most people end up doing that stuff and more in Mod 3 than in Mod 2. But ultimately, I care that you can get stuff done. I don't give a shit how you do it. So if you'd like to explore Node or Python or something like that for backend stuff, like you're going to be too busy in Mod 2 probably to play around with that stuff too much. But Mod 3's got mountains of space to explore a lot of those kinds of things. Same thing with the front end stuff. Like you're probably going to be a little overwhelmed with this as it is in Mod 2, but Mod 4, you'll do some React, but you can also experiment with Vue and Angular and like lots of other stuff. There's like, what you'll see is that there's less difference between a lot of these things than it may seem. But y'all probably got some pretty full plates for Mod 2 overall.
Model follow the same kind of format of just like classes this week, learning about stuff, code challenge,
Very similar shape.
and then project week.
And like it's going to be slightly different just because of the weird schedule, but this is what we talked about this morning. This isn't a guarantee. We might change this still. But regular week, start code challenges on Monday instead of Tuesday. We'll have these 2 days off. I'll do a hackathon on this day and then have one more day for code challenges. And then projects end up going through the end of Tuesday the following week.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
As we talked about this morning, it might change still. Something to be aware of is that more so than probably than Mod 1, Mod 2, and Mod 5, Mods 2 and 3 are way different in Denver than they are on any other campus. So the way that Mods 2 and 3 work most other places is you would start by like building servers with rack, which is a gem. And then you would build what we call monolithic apps. That's like all your HTML and CSS and JavaScript and database and front end and back end. It's all just in one big ass thing. You build monolithic apps in Sinatra. And then you do the same thing in Rails. And then in mod 3, you would do JavaScript and DOM and fetching and stuff. So this is the way the traditional Flatiron curriculum works. So the reason that we don't do it this way is building servers by hand, building anything in Sinatra, and then building a monolithic app in Rails. You'll do this in mod 2, and then you'll never do it again for the rest of your life. Stuff. It's kind of like it's not dead. It's still pretty common out there, but it's dying as a way to build things. It's supposed to be super instructional about like, oh, do you see how this piece builds on this piece and builds on this piece? Which is not at all what the outcome of that has been when we used to teach it that way. It just ends up being confusing because you teach the same thing 4 different ways and only the last one actually matters. So over time in Denver, we cut out basically all of mod 2 and turned that into build APIs, bring all this stuff back in here. And then in mod 3, we just build depth on all of those things. And one of the reasons we did it that way is it's still the same code challenge as everybody else does for mod 2 and mod 3. And that's important for a few reasons. But yeah, we essentially buy 3 more weeks to do more useful things than this. So as such, as you're going through these labs, you're going to find some areas, especially with this one, where it starts getting a little bit awkward. It's assuming maybe things that like you haven't done before. There's just some of those things that are going to feel unfamiliar. As a big red flag, if you ever see the word ERB, we're not doing those. That has to do with this stuff. So any Rail curriculum stuff you see that talks about templates or ERBs or anything like that, that's not what we're doing in mod 2. Good news is, getting started with Rails, I wonder if we have any content on that. I'll make this search faster one of these days. So much Rails, so much. It just keeps going and going and going. It's beginning Rails stuff and advanced Rails stuff and in context Rails stuff and relationships and so much. Lots and lots and lots of Rails. It's an intro. So mod 2 is it's fairly common for people in mod 2 to start relying more on these than on the labs, but there's still lots of good labs that you can use. Cool, more questions?
So is mod 2 like thin, shallow slices?
Thin, shallow slices. It is discrete skills.
Right.
So yeah, we're doing we're getting you through your novice and some of your advanced beginner stuff. Difference between these two is novice is I can follow instructions. Advanced beginner is I can add a little bit of context to it so that I know when I should do this thing or when I should do this. So you can kind of think of those as if this is a straight line, we can apply some branching logic here. And then competence, we're starting to get the sense of the whole and how it fits together. Mod 2, we're doing mostly this. Mod 3, we start getting this.
According to your graph, are you saying as soon as we're competent, everything falls apart?
So the the rest of the graph is proficient and expert. I usually draw this with a chasm in there, not because everything falls apart, but here, I'll show you my like well-drawn one. So when you cross over this chasm, proficiency and expertise have a lot more to do with each other than proficient does with competent. So this is where you start building intuition, and experts work almost entirely off of intuition. So like proficient is kind of like a junior expert rather than like an advanced competent. Of the things that we teach in the program, advanced, beginner, and competent are like where we're targeting by the end of the program for like most of them.
When do people start going into the, what was it called, like the doom descent or whatever you call that thing?
Oh, the basin. So it's different for everybody. But if this was the beginning of Mod 1 and it just kept getting better and we're riding high after like project week, you're still gonna like, God, I'm still learning so much. And then Mod 2 is maybe like a little bit Mod 3. Like I said, it'll be different for everybody. Like, God, this is hard. Everybody else is getting it. I'm not figuring this out fast enough. I knew I couldn't be a programmer. And then that starts happening. And then if you just keep going, everything gets better again.
So buckle up, take your vitamin D.
Yes, correct.
Work out. Gotcha.
This is also around the time when this one and Mod 3 are like, if you had programming background before the program, like maybe you're able to like just kind of scoot through Mod 1. And you're like, well, this isn't so bad. This is where we start hitting stuff that like, if you're in the program, you probably never seen most of this stuff. And so some of you might have been learning how to hustle in Mod 1, and some of you might have been getting a false impression of how easy it was in Mod 1. I actually don't think we have much of that in this cohort, but just throwing that out there.
So by discover the mod this afternoon, that's just free time for us to jump into stuff and then come tomorrow with topics.
Correct. A good target for you is see if you can comfortably get returning something from an action in an API. So like if like that /dogs example, if you can get something to go into a database and come back, if you hit it in your browser, by the end of the day, that's like in pretty damn good shape.
All right, what was that again? Return something to your API?
Yeah, if you can get this to happen, you go to a URL, you see some data come back. If you can do that by the end of the day, you're in pretty good shape. Oh, one more thing I'll give you related to that. Our calendar isn't going to look exactly like this, but as a rough split up of these standards, so if we're here right now, you're probably going to be Railsing through here or so. We'll do HTML and CSS are not like an actual part of the curriculum here, which is a travesty. So we're going to spend very little time on it. It's like as much as we can spare. Hopefully by the end of the week, we start getting a little JavaScript-y. Maybe we start talking about the DOM. to get some more DOM kind of stuff in here. Get some fetch kind of stuff happening in here. This will just keep going. Forms, probably about in here. So like, we don't have the whole week to just spend on Rails. And some of you are going to spend less time or more time than others on these different standards, but it's a rough breakdown. It's probably somewhere in this neighborhood. You guys actually benefit from having like some extra weekends in there and like these days, which like I want to honor the holiday. Like you don't have to do anything in here, but you're going to get some pretty good settling time for a lot of these ideas. So I think you guys might be in better shape in some ways than a lot of other cohorts are. Other questions about Mod 2?
Not exactly Mod 2 related, but I was kind of just thinking like about the project from Mod 1 and hoping I could connect with yourself or Emmett or Damon or someone just to like look through things and talk about what I could do better and where to improve that. So I don't know if there'd be time for that like this afternoon or something.
Throw it in tech questions. Tech questions just say like, hey, can I get someone to review my Mod 1 project? You can do that. Anything else? All right. Be patient with yourself. Like, focus on one thing at a time. We got Rails. That's what we're doing today. Look at some of the lab resources. Maybe watch a video. Ask questions. Help each other out. Use your Zoom rooms. And have a good time, because this is also where it starts getting fucking fun. Because you're able to make things you can send people that like, you know, are like web apps that you've used before and stuff. It's a pretty cool time in the program. So help each other out. Bon suerte. Have a good lunch.